All right, guys, welcome back to the show. My name is Paul. Today we are going to cover 3 ways to heat your Barndominium. We are at the Mad County Build, which is my personal home, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the radiant in-floor heat, our wood stove, which is right behind us, and then we also have backup HVAC units, which we primarily use for air conditioning, but we can also use the furnace if we need to. So to get started, I guess let's just talk about all the homes we build. We put radiant heat in both the house and the garage. It's one of those things where it's so efficient, it works so well, that it just doesn't make sense not to do it. I never tell people that they should do something, but this is one of those things that I would never leave out of my personal home. As far as your home goes in your garage, to properly do all the underground work under your concrete floor, you need a vapor barrier and you need insulation. So at that point, the only additional thing you would need to add is the tubing. And the tubing's about $100 to $110 per 300 feet. So it's really not that much in cost extra to just prepare your underslab for radiant heat. So that's why I suggest you should always do it. You can always buy the controls, which is the most expensive part, in the boiler at a later date. So for most of you, if you're building a Barndominium, there's a good chance you're building on an acreage or a small farm, which is our case. We have lots of firewood readily available. I personally love cutting and splitting firewood. It's not something I have a ton of time to do, but I like it. So when I get after it, I can get a couple years worth of wood cut and split in a short amount of time. The wood stove behind me is a Regency F5100, which we use pretty much every day once we get the cold weather moves in. And this is nice because it reduces the amount of heat you need from your radiant heat source, or if you just have a furnace, how much that will actually run. We're going to put some numbers up here for you. We've been here in this house for a couple years, so we have a couple years of utility bills. And it's pretty shocking, in my opinion, how cheap it is to pay for the heat and electric in this house, being that it's 4,000 square feet, plus we keep our garage at 60 degrees all winter. So to give you guys an idea, typically how we heat our house, kind of like what the cycle is we will set our in-floor radiant heat at roughly 68 degrees. We run the thermostats for the radiant heat off of a concrete sensor. So it's turning the unit on and off by the temperature of the concrete, not the air. Now the thermostat will also run off of air, but by doing that, if you open a door, a bunch of cold air rushes in, it'll turn the radiant floor on until the air temperature is back up to that temperature that you have it set at, which the way radiant floor heat works is it heats that whole mass of concrete up to the specified temperature, which is 68, and then that concrete heats the walls up, everything to that temperature. So if you open your door and you have a bunch of cold air rush in, you shut it, it takes very little time for it to feel back at 68 degrees. So that's what we do. We keep our house at 68, the garage at 60. That way when we are coming in and out of our garage, it's not operating off air temperature, because that thing's going to turn on and it's going to take a while for the air temperature to get back up to where it needs to be. So you're going to be wasting a lot of gas to get it back up to where it needs to be. And it kind of doesn't make any sense, but once you experience it, it's kind of crazy, because with like a traditional furnace, you have hot and cold pockets because it's heating with the air. So you might have a cold pocket of air over here, hot pocket over there, where the radiant, it is all just a consistent temperature. And then on top of that, we supplement with the wood stove. We have access to firewood, so I make sure we always have a couple years worth of firewood cut, split, and dried. And then I keep this going. This specific wood stove, I said it was the Regency F5100. It's got over a 20-hour burn time. So usually I'll get home, I'll stock it up, get it going. Before I go to bed, I'll fill it up, shut the damper, turn the air all the way down. And when I get up in the morning, there's still wood in there burning. And then we just let it dissipate throughout the day. And then when I get home, I throw more wood in there. There's usually enough hot coals and everything in there that it starts up back on its own. The reason we don't usually keep it going during the day is because the sun heats up the house through the windows, and so on and so forth. So it's a really efficient way to heat your house. We have a double wall pipe that goes up 18 feet, so whatever heat we're not getting off of the actual stove, that pipe is also radiating heat, and it will keep both the downstairs and upstairs of the house at 72 degrees pretty easily. Now, I do have a fan on this that I never run that I could probably heat the house up to over 80 degrees if I wanted to. That's obviously too hot. I will say I do have one of these eco fans that sits on top of it that functions off the heat, so it doesn't require any electricity or anything. It just will spin and moves a little air through the house. So if we weren't to run our wood stove, we have the whole downstairs has radiant in-floor heat. The upstairs does not. So if we were just to be running our in-floor heat, the upstairs typically where the bedrooms are will run about 5-6 degrees cooler than it does downstairs, which in all reality works out pretty well because the kids seem to get hot in the night anyway, so it works out pretty good. However, with the wood stove, all that heat rises. We keep the ceiling fans on low, and it heats up even back in where the kids' rooms are up to 71 degrees, 72 degrees, whatever. It typically stays the exact same up there, even back in their bedrooms, as it does down here on the main floor. So this thermostat here controls the heat, the furnace, HVAC system. So if you got modes, you can put it on heat, you can have it cool, you can have it off. But the nice thing about this, if you have a wood stove or even your in-floor heat, you can go to the fan setting and you can put it on automatic, or if you put it on circulate, it will turn the fan and run the fan on the furnace 30% of the time. It's not creating any heat, it's just using the ductwork to circulate air through the house, which is a nice feature. If maybe you're having trouble getting air moved around your house, it will circulate the air. I typically don't even have that on because the house seems to stay warm on its own. And then this is the thermostat for the radiant in-floor heat. And you can either run this off of a floor sensor or air sensor or a combination of both. We run it just on the floor sensor, and you will have one of these for each zone. So we have one out here in this area, and then we actually have another one in our bedroom, and then 2 more in the garage for the garage zones. And so we can set all of those at different temperatures. All right, guys, so this is my utility room. Behind me is my in-floor heat system. So I have, just before we get too much into this, I have videos on all this stuff. Actually, our in-floor heat system, we're kind of revamping that series right now, so we'll get that back up as soon as we can. But the wood stove, I have a series on that, on installing it, putting the chimney pipe in, and then also our furnaces. So this is where all of the controls, all of the tubing and everything comes out and controls the in-floor heat system. I choose to run, I have an NTI boiler, which is a combi unit, but I only heat my in-floor heat with it, and then I have a separate heater for my potable water. And then here's my HVAC system. It's an Amana. We mainly use this for air conditioning, but I did go ahead and get the combination furnace air conditioning unit just because it wasn't that much more, and it's a backup if some reason, something went wrong with the in-floor heat or something like that. It's nice to have it. I will say that when we use this is either late spring or early fall, where you might not necessarily want your in-floor heat on, because I guess the only downside to radiant heat is it's not a quick turnaround. And what I mean by that is you can't change the temperature 5-10 degrees over like 10 minutes. It takes a little while for it to come up to heat or go down. But that's just what we do. We'll leave some utility costs on the screen, kind of break that down for you. I guess that's going to be a wrap for this video. Hopefully this is helpful. If you guys want any more information on this, check out our YouTube channel. We cover all this stuff on that in detail. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next video.